Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Miranda. Nice to see you again, or nice to meet you for the first time. Today I'm going to be talking about kind of just how I moved to South Korea. So when I first moved here in February, I had all these people message me. People I knew, people I didn't know, people I hadn't spoken to in years. All these people messaged me about how I moved here, why I moved here, where I'm living, what I'm doing for work, all this stuff. And I think especially because I moved here during COVID, with a cat also, there's a lot of layers to how I moved here. So yeah, I'm just gonna give my story, why and how I moved to South Korea. Here we go. I may make a full video of this later, of the why I moved to South Korea, but the very short version is just that it's something I wanted to do for a long time. I really wanted to live abroad, specifically in South Korea, for a few years now. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, but had just never committed to. I loved absolutely every second of living in New York for the 4 years that I was there, but unfortunately I lost my job in May because of COVID cuts at my company, so I was let go, and I lived there until December just on unemployment and looking at jobs, but there really weren't any, and there weren't any that made it worth staying in New York and paying the amount of money that you have to pay to live in New York. So I decided to leave when my lease was up in January. I went and stayed with my parents for a few weeks to transition, and then moved to South Korea in February 2021. So this process started in about the summer of 2020, about 2 months after I got let go from my company. I decided to move to South Korea. So I found an online TOEFL course and started that in August of 2020, completed it early November 2020, and then almost immediately started working with recruiters and looking at job postings online to try and find a position for a March 1 start date in Korea. What I was looking for was a March 1 start date in Seoul. I was looking specifically at Gangnam, but I was open to other locations, obviously, as long as it was kind of in the inner Seoul area. I really wanted to be able to get to things very easily. And also, just coming from New York City, I'm a city girl through and through, and I really wanted to be able to be in the hustle and bustle of main area of Seoul. So I wanted Seoul, I wanted a March 1 start date. It had to have housing that was pet friendly, specifically cat friendly, and those were kind of the main things that I was looking for. I really wanted to teach about, I think about 6 to 9 is what I put as my preferred age of kids that I wanted to teach. So I started working with 3 different recruiters, and definitely, like, some of it was a good experience, but I found that recruiters can definitely try and sway you to do something besides what it is you actually want to do. They immediately tried to get me to consider Busan or Gwangju or one of the other large cities, which I'm sure are amazing. I want to go to all of them someday, but I was set on Seoul, and they do make it sound a little bit like there's no positions in Seoul because everyone wants to be in Seoul, but they very quickly, as soon as I put my foot down, found positions in Seoul for me to interview with. So obviously there are positions, lots of them in Seoul. Definitely there are fewer positions right now because of COVID. A lot of schools are only hiring from within Korea, foreigners that are already here. So I did have to be a little more flexible kind of on hours, that kind of thing, pay. You couldn't be quite as picky as you might normally would be. I started looking for a position about early November. I think I finished my TEFL and like immediately started looking for a position. And I also took a specialized TEFL course specifically in teaching young children to kind of beef up my resume a bit because of COVID and because I was also bringing a pet, just to try and make myself look a bit more appealing and stick out from the crowd. So my TEFL course was really amazing. I went through ITA, International TEFL Academy, and the reason I chose them is because they offer lifetime job support. So they help you find recruiters in practically any country you want to go to. They'll help look at your international resume for you. They'll look at contracts to see if there's any red flags. So that was the big reason that I chose them. And I'm really happy I did. I'm super happy with my experience with them. So I started working with 3 recruiters. They all found me interviews very quickly in Seoul. One of them didn't work out because the cat was a deal breaker for them and a non-negotiable for me, so that didn't work out. But another one didn't work out because they ended up hiring a girl who was actually in Korea already. And then the one that I went with was actually not one of the ones that my recruiters found for me. I found it on Dave's ESL Cafe, which I can link below in the description. It's a job posting board. There's specifically a Korea board where you can look at all these listings. It's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of them, and some of them are kind of sketchy looking because they have like all caps or like 20 exclamation points or things like that. So you do have to be a little careful and sift through them. But the one I found seemed very legitimate. It was for a kindergarten and elementary school in Gangnam with a March 1 start date, and I interviewed with them, had a really great experience. They were okay with my cat coming and even wrote it into the contract for me that it was okay for him to live in the housing. And within a couple days, I accepted the position, signed the contract, and started getting ready to move to South Korea. So before I even started looking for a job though, even before I had started my TEFL course, I started getting all of my documents ready though. So there's a bunch of documents that you need, and they took a lot longer because of COVID for me personally. So you need things like a FBI background check, which you have to get your fingerprints done and everything, send it to the FBI. You also have to get your degree notarized from your state. So that took a while because there was like a misunderstanding about how it needed to be done, and they had to send it back and do it again. And you need passport photos, you need sometimes you need transcripts. There's a bunch of stuff that you need. It's very easy to find what you need online if you just search like the documents to get a visa to come to South Korea to teach. So I'm on an E2 visa, which is specifically for English teachers coming to Korea. So you can very easily look up the documents required to get an E2 visa, but it does take a while. They usually recommend you start about 6 months before you actually want to come to Korea. I started gathering my documents about, I think, late July, early August maybe, to come early February. So it takes a while. And it took even longer because of COVID. So now that COVID is getting better, hopefully it will start to be a little more back to normal. But there was other things that were different, like the consulate that I had to send all my documents to was not accepting physical passports. So you had to send all your documents and like a copy of your passport, and then they sent you the visa as just like a sheet of paper. It was not actually put into your passport like usual. So definitely a lot of things were kind of different because of the pandemic. And then also there was the cat side of things. So during all of this, I was also having to gather all of the documents needed to bring my cat with me, which I already did a video kind of about that process. It was definitely a long, stressful process. I also had to get COVID tested multiple times. I had to get COVID tested in New York just to send my documents to the consulate to have my visa granted to me. So I wasn't even traveling or anything, but I still had to get a COVID test to prove that I was negative for them to grant my visa. And then I had to get COVID tested before I flew out and after I arrived also. And then also after the quarantine. So I think I was tested 4 times in total. So once I had my job, I had the contract signed, I had my visa granted, I had all the documents needed for my cat, I had everything that I needed to go. It was just time to pack and get ready to actually leave. So I was staying with my parents that time, and I'm so thankful for all of the help that they gave me getting ready to move to another country, because it is a lot of work. So yeah, I was packing, deciding what to bring. I really love clothes and fashion and makeup and all this stuff. I am not a minimalist, as you can probably see. So it was definitely kind of hard for me to narrow down what to bring. I ended up packing 2 enormous duffel bags and then 2 suitcases. One was a small one was a large one. And then I had my tote bag and cat as my carry-ons. So my school is a Hagwon, which is a private English academy, and that's what I was looking for. The reason I wanted a private school was because you have say over where you are. If you go the public school route, you're often just sent somewhere. So you could be in downtown Seoul, or you could be in some town in the middle of nowhere. It just really depends, depending on what program you use. But I was really set on Seoul, so I went the private school route, even though the hours can be a bit more intense. So once everything was packed and I had my 2 enormous duffel bags and 2 suitcases ready to go, I was ready to leave to Korea. Thankfully, Korean Air has, I think it's 2 bags that are checked for free. And then, so I paid for 2 additional bags to be checked. But I think each additional bag is $200, and then the cat is another $200. So it was about $600 to get all of my stuff here. So it's a good thing I didn't have to pay for my plane ticket and the school paid for it. So, but all worth it because I have my stuff. I like having my stuff, so now I have my stuff. That's kind of the story of how I got to Korea. I left New York, I used a TEFL program, I found a school on Dave's ESL Cafe, moved here in February with my cat. I might make a separate video about all the reasons why I wanted to come specifically to South Korea. And then I was also thinking of making a video of the quarantine process and kind of life working at a Hagwon in Korea so far. So far it's been a really positive experience. I really enjoyed it. There's definitely been rough days. Obviously, moving to a new country, culture where you don't really speak the language very much, it's definitely a huge undertaking, very stressful, but entirely worth it in my opinion. Even the hard days, I'm still really glad that I did this. So yeah, this video is getting kind of long, so I think I'm gonna make a separate video about the why I moved to South Korea specifically, and also about my experience quarantining. Definitely, like, I could talk a lot more about the whole quarantine experience and the arriving in Korea during COVID and the airport experience. I could probably make an entire video out of, so I may. And then also just kind of life as a foreigner since arriving in Korea. So if you want to see any of that, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can see more content when I post it. Thanks so much for sticking around for this long rambly video. I hope that it was interesting for you guys and maybe answered some questions about how I moved here and how maybe you could move here also if you're interested in that. So if you have any questions about the whole process, please let me know. You can add me on Instagram and DM me, or you can leave comments and I will try to respond to them. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you in my next video. Bye.